off the face of the earth in the last few weeks. Isn't McLaren sort of revolution? Is it there revolutionary upgrades at McLaren?
Yeah, I think maybe it's an incident where I'd like to say that the rest of the pack has sort of caught up to them in technical matters, but what we've been seeing is the drivers just complaining about the car. Not so much Perez, I think Perez is just like you said, we don't know where he is. But on the other hand, Max
I don't
Verstappen,
think posters. I don't think we've had a single second of screen time that entire Grand Prix. I genuinely don't think we saw him once, apart from perhaps when he was getting past
uh,
Russell.
George Russell,
Yeah.
he had a bit of a tussle with Russell. Um,
Russell.
but yeah, I mean, it's difficult, I think there's a lot of stuff going down at Red Bull at the moment. But if we look at the season as a whole, race by race, we've got Max Verstappen and Carlos winning the first three, and then Max Verstappen sort of dominating the early stage of the season until China. Then we get a first win for Lando Norris, which is really good. Um, Back to Max Verstappen, and then I think at this point everyone sort of thinks, Max Verstappen, he's leading the championship. It's going to be another year, but like 2023. Like we've had a couple of new winners, but that would have just been by luck. But then afterwards, we get Monaco. The curse has been broken. Charles Leclerc finally wins his home race, and even still after that, we get two more Max Verstappen wins. And I think at this point, I'm not sure if we mentioned it in the podcast, but I was definitely thinking, there's there's no way anyone else can beat this. It might be just a fourth year of Red Bull winning. But then if you look beyond the race results and you actually look into the race itself, what actually happens, you can see sort of an uprise in McLaren's performance. It doesn't say because obviously because there's only one winner, but you can see the performance increase of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri getting podiums after podium, and then you get to a race like Austria where Lando Norris is finally challenging for a win against Max Verstappen, on equal terms. But then obviously they have that incident and George Russell takes the win. A surprise victory for Lewis Hamilton in at the British Grand Prix. I think that's well deserved. We can all agree on that. And then after that, Max Verstappen hasn't got a win since. And I think something has definitely happened from just before the summer break to now, where Red Bull have sort of lost the plot and they don't really know what they're doing. And every year is different, We can't, as much as it's good to use data from the past, you can't expect anything to be the same in the future, especially not in a sport like F1. It very much seems like everything is the same, especially to new fans or people who don't really know the sport well. But those who know and understand the sport to a true level will be able to confidently believe that you can't expect anything to happen based on the past. Obviously, with an 8 year run with Mercedes, you could, and maybe a 2 or 3 year run with Red Bull. But this season is very much like no other. And I think we said it before at the beginning of the podcast for this season that we're definitely going to get some surprises along the way. And I think I'm very excited as a Formula One fan to be seeing these new race winners, or not new faces, but returning faces like with the likes of Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc, and I think a championship battle, especially in the constructors, is definitely on.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with some discussion of the woes and the wins of the Italian Grand Prix. All right, we are back, and now it's time to have a look at some of the woes and the winners from the 2024 Italian Grand Prix. First off, Amish, can you give me your driver of the weekend?
For the Italian Grand Prix, I mean, I think it's a pretty easy one to say. I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. Obviously, Ferrari had a major upgrade this weekend, and they sort of deserve to win based on their performance. But I think everyone is sort of excited for Charles Leclerc this weekend to win Ferrari's home race. I'm sure all of the Tifosi are. and I think even if we aren't Ferrari fans, we are very happy for him. So I think driver of the weekend has to go to Charles Leclerc.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Oh God, I was absolutely buzzing when we saw the podium, the beautiful podium celebrations at Monza with the sea of Scuderia fans. That brings me back to 2019 when Charles last won the Italian Grand Prix, one of the first Grand Prix that I watched live, and that was chills. That was a crazy race, and so was this, and. Yeah, I mean, absolutely inspired one-stop strategy for the win. I think Ferrari have turned the whole conversation on its head. I don't know if you recall a few years ago with the whole Spinotto meme, but there was there's certainly been some moments that Ferrari would like to forget on the strategy side of things, but they have turned it around. Dutch Grand Prix, they converted P6 and P10 in quali to a double top five finish, and this time around, they went all in. They went all in on the one stop and came away with the win. Amesh, is this a philosophy change at Ferrari? Because the car doesn't seem to have got much better, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I think morale definitely seems higher after the race win, but and especially in the Dutch Grand Prix, the results were pretty good. They converted a low qualifying position into a good race result, and that's what's important. Um, Qualifying for the Italian Grand Prix, um, they were still pretty high up. It was George Russell who was P3. After that became the Ferrari. So 4 and 5, they converted Charles Leclerc's P4 into a win, which is really good. But yeah, I think they do have a few upgrades. They have a new front and rear wing for Monza. I think now is a really good time to get that in because Ferrari really wanted to um, give it their all for Monza and sort of boost morale, not just for the team, but for their fans as well. I think that's important. Um, Monza is a low downforce track, as we all know. So bringing new upgrades is quite difficult to make an impact because the field should be quite tight. Everyone should be performing at a similar level because there's less aerodynamic influence apart from just having as little downforce as possible. We saw Red Bull. They went with a slightly higher downforce package just so they can get through sector two quite quickly, but it didn't really turn in the favor of them, and everyone else sort of was faster in the speed traps. I think Ferrari were pretty high up there. Um, I have data here which shows, their airflow has increased. It's improved. I think they've increased the lengths of some parts to sort of manipulate airflow in a more efficient way. I think that's important considering the idea of dirty air. At Monza, it's very important because although we have a big slipstream and tow, as they were talking about along this weekend, there's always going to be the effect of dirty air when following the car behind. And I think that was really important during the race. We looked at McLaren as well. Uh, I think both Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both said that clean air is king, and I think that went to show very importantly in this weekend because they seem to be sort of struggling following the cars ahead, which were the Ferraris. But yeah, I think Ferrari's technical upgrades have definitely shown strengths this weekend.
Do you think they can catch up with Red Bull and spark a three-way fight for the title, or is that out of the question at the moment?
I wouldn't put it out of question. I think I think it's quite far, to be honest.
50 points,
400
less than
yeah,
four.
it- yeah, less than 50 points. It's a difficult one to say. You know, I mean they're quite up there, but on the driver championship, I don't think so. But on the constructors, I think they do need a sense of consistency. Uh, and that is something that we can't really rely on with Ferrari. As much as it's hard to say, we have to be honest and face the facts. They've got two race wins, which is pretty. Oh, three race wins, which is actually the same as McLaren this year. But I think when they haven't been winning, the race results haven't been haven't been so consistent. If you look at the run or the current runner-up, McLaren, when they're not winning, they've at least got a P2 or P3 or both coming up the race weekends. That's something that Ferrari just haven't been doing. And although they're 39 points behind, it's still a bit of a stretch. And I think they need to get past McLaren as well, who are on a streak at the moment. And I think it's a big challenge for them. But P3 will be a really good result. I think their battle is with Mercedes, even though Mercedes are quite far behind. They are on, they're sort of climbing their way up the ranks. But yeah, I think Ferrari are in a good place at the moment.
I don't know about that point on consistency, actually. I mean, the combined Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz have raced 32 races. And out of those 32 races, they've only finished outside of the top five on seven occasions. That means that they finished within the top five in 79% of their running. And bearing in mind, Carlos Sainz missed a race in Saudi Arabia. And that's also not including two retirements, one for Leclerc and one for Sainz as well. So that's a pretty good ratio of races that they've finished. They've only been outside of the top five on four occasions. So I think their consistency is just about there, and they can close the gap to McLaren. I think Charles Leclerc, if he puts in a few more stellar performances as he's been doing, he's on a triple podium run. He could get to about where Norris is by the end of the season. I mean, it's not out of the question. I think it's more difficult for Norris to close the gap to Max, to be frank. And if Carlos Sainz tries to recapture the form, or if he does recapture the form of the first few races, he could definitely challenge Piastri for P4 as well. So I would not put it out of the question. It's more the Ferrari curse or the Ferrari environment that I'm worried about, and also perhaps the fact that the Ferrari car is nowhere near the McLaren at the moment. But I wouldn't be surprised if, this time next year, Ferrari are putting in a shift for the title if they really do get a wiggle on, especially with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton in the mix. So I don't know if I agree with you there, to be honest.
Yeah, you're definitely right. It's not out of question. I'm just saying it's difficult. If we look at like you're right. If we look at the stats, Ferrari's sort of averaging 30 points per race weekend. They've got they had a good start. Australia was probably by far their best race at the beginning, and I think that's been their best race throughout the whole season so far. That was a Ferrari 1-2, right, with Carlos Sainz winning. So that was pretty good. Unfortunately, they had a double DNF in Canada with 0 points. But in the sort of McLaren uprise, after say Spain or including Spain, they haven't scored as many points as they should be to be competing for P2 or even lead of the Constructors' Championship. Uh, the British Grand Prix was pretty poor for them, 11 points. Same with the Spanish Grand Prix, under 20 with 18 points. But the Italian Grand Prix, like you said, probably then next best race in terms of points. But I think it's probably even better than Australia in terms of winning at that stage of the season because it boosts morale and it's definitely showing a sense of strength for the latter half, which is, I think, arguably just as important as scoring more points at the beginning of the season.
Let's move on to
Um,
who you thought was
yeah, go on. Yeah.
the biggest sort of flop of the weekend. Who do you think could have performed way better?
I'm gonna go. I think an obvious answer at the beginning, at the top end of the field, I would say Max Verstappen.
Mhm.
Qualifying P6. It's not great for him. Um, I think it was a difficult race, and I don't think you can excuse that, especially of a driver of his caliber and his expectations. If he's meant to be leading the drivers' championship, he can't afford to have one A race like this, especially going on a six race streak without having won. I think it's been a difficult time for him. Another driver I would like to mention would be, mm, I would want to say the Alpines. I think they did all right, but both both Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon have been pretty quiet.